Oh, hi, Mark.
Yeah, but your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they could, they didn't stop to think if they should.
Hey, Stella! You got him, Jack! I love you!
Have fun storming the castle.
When the legend becomes fact, print the legend.
Tell them we'll have punch and pack. We're not gonna have punch and pie. My bill will come if they think we have punch and pack.
Hello and welcome to Frame, part of Punch and Pie Media. We are the podcast that take two seemingly unconnected films and slam them together, like a suicide-obsessed 20-year-old and a silicone anatomically correct doll. I'm Andy Williams.
And I'm Sean Wilson.
And this week we're talking about, is it odd couples, strange relationships?
Unorthodox relationships, I think we said, didn't we?
Unorthodox. That's certainly one way of describing it. So that wonderful voice you heard would be Sean Wilson, famed author, as we well know. And
Sean,
so
where did that come from? You've never introduced me like that before. So...
well, I mean, famed author and co-host.
I'll take it. Yeah,
just as well. Well, I mean, this is the thing, right? Although it hasn't shown out in the release orders, it's been a long time since we last edited.
We have actually, yeah.
Recorded.
It's been several weeks, yeah. So
we're both out of the swing somewhat. We've had a good half an hour's catch up prior to recording, and so even though the release dates show differently, in the last episode was released last week, there is a gap in our releasing, and that's down to numerous different things, but it's because we're out of practice.
I mean, if being out of practice gets me compliments like that, we should do it more often. So, just saying.
By that you mean podcast less often?
Well, yeah, no, actually, no. That's a bad idea. So just do regular service. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, Sean, given that these two films are about unorthodox relationships, both between a 79-year-old Holocaust survivor and a kind of maudling 20-year-old suicide-obsessed boy, and Ryan Gosling and a sex doll, what's the most unorthodox relationship that you've been a part of?
Well, I was going to say this one with you. This partnership.
And there you go. I gave you the open goal, and you shot it straight
and
there.
I went in, that was a goal, to quote Alan Partridge. So, because that's the extent of my football knowledge, even though as we're recording, the World Cup is on.
It is.
But yeah. I mean, you're a doll. So, not literally, but yeah. So,
I'm easily malleable and utterly submissive. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. I mean, I think, when it comes to us talking about terrible films, I'm usually the submissive one, because I'm normally the one who goes, "Oh, let's just get on with it." So, but they normally yield some of our best episodes, I think. But I
mean, you're normally the one driving those, but anyway.
Well, yeah. Who am I kidding? Actually, that's true. Actually, yeah. Yeah.
Although I will tease next week's theme. Next week's theme was all me, and one of the films in particular I'm really looking forward to you watching.
Yes. You can take the glee out of your voice. Yeah.
Well, that is a next week thing.
We're doing a this week thing this week.
This is a this week thing, yeah. So let's start off, as we always do, in chronological order. Why don't we look at the 1971 Hal Ashby existentialist drama, Harold and Maude?
Yeah, so real cult 70s gem, as you said, from Hal Ashby, who was one of the leading lights of alternative Hollywood throughout the 1960s and 1970s. So he directed this, he directed The Last Detail with Jack Nicholson, which is a tremendous film. He also directed Being There with Peter Sellers, which I know we've discussed on this podcast before, one of Peter Sellers' greatest performances. This is probably Hal Ashby's most famous movie. I don't
know. He was Oscar nominated for, a couple.
Yeah,
he won
I think
like The Russians are coming. In the Heat of the Night.
Yeah, in the heat of the night. Yeah, I mean, you know what I feel about the Oscars when you try and sort of equivocate, fame with Oscars, you kind of tend to know how annoyed I get at that. I mean, I think if you said to most people a Hal Ashby movie, assuming they knew who you were talking about at all, I think they'd probably go for Harold and Maude pretty quickly, because it is a very, very famous film, although not that much appreciated when it first came out in 1971. So
in terms of his directorial, yes,
okay,
it was only the second film he made. He was an editor on those other films.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So, as you said, centers around suicidal young man, Harold Chasen, played by the late Bud Cort. Bud Cort died earlier this year. Really, really interesting actor. He's he's an extremely morbid young man who stages these very elaborate and very grotesque fake suicides in front of his ridiculously prim and kind of distant and detached mother, brilliantly played by Vivian Pickles, and he also drives a hearse. His mother does not appear to notice the fact that Harold is calling out for attention by staging these elaborately baroque sort of fake suicide attempts. So it's clearly a cry for help. She's not noticing it.
Yes. Well, the thing is, at the start, like, it's not clear what he's doing. It looks like he's genuinely
yeah,
trying
you
to
don't know if it's being played for laughs, do you? You think, oh my god, has he
Yeah.
actually killed himself? And then when it starts
Yeah.
happening again and again and again, you think, oh, okay, right, this is obviously a comic series of repetitions, right? yeah.
Exactly. So upon watching it first time I watched it was when we watched it together in the Watershed, and
Yes, in Bristol, best cinema in the
yes,
world.
and co-sign.
Yeah.
And we that was the first time I saw it, so I was like, okay, this is quite macabre. And at least like watching it the second time, I was more on board with the tone of it. I got where we were going, so I was able to appreciate it a bit more. But yes, he's setting up these elaborate suicidal set pieces.
Yeah, I'd actually forgotten I'd forgotten that was the first time we watched that. I was sat next to you, and your face was an absolute what on earth is this? Like, what's going on? And then you realise that he's doing it for show, although there is an emotional undertone to why he's doing it. He also crashes random funerals of people that he doesn't know. And
yeah, what odd person would hang out in graveyards when they were a young person?
Oh, I knew that. I knew we weren't done with that. Yeah. We're doing the alas poor Yorick thing, like holding the skull up. Yeah, I did. I had a penchant for graveyards, and maybe I should have been called Harold. So I mean, yeah, graveyards were fascinating. What can I say?
They're certainly odd places, and
they're very
Harold
singular.
does like to frequent them.
Yeah, and so it's no surprise then I actually quite like the character of Harold in this film. I mean, weird suicide attempts aside, but yeah. So he crashes random funerals, and then one day at the funeral of somebody he doesn't know, he meets 79-year-old Maude, played by Ruth Gordon, famed as the writer of Adam's Ribbon, who also won an Oscar for playing Minnie Castevet in Rosemary's Baby 3 years prior to this. Brilliant performance, Hollywood legend in her own right. And they strike up a camaraderie. And it's the classic thing of Harold is younger but introverted and morose. She's older and more exuberant and prone to carjacking and getting into all manner of trouble. And they form a bond, which initially starts as a quirky chalk and cheese friendship, and then appears to turn into something deeper than that, and indeed does turn into something deeper than that. They have a shared philosophy on life and death, which seems to communicate something to Harold that he hasn't known before, and he in turn reignites Maude's youthful vigor. So they complement each other effectively. She teaches him about life, he teaches her to deal with the incoming spectre of death, and it develops from a platonic relationship into something that is effectively romantic, hence our theme, unorthodox relationships, because this is not these are not necessarily two characters that you would put together walking together on the street. It would certainly probably raise a few eyebrows, and
it would.
It becomes a blackly comic yet ultimately very tender and very freewheeling story about two lost souls who just happen to stumble upon each other, and it is absolutely wonderful in a way that only really a 1970s movie would have dared to do. The idea that it is all about character. There's not really that much plot. I mean, in classic 1970s fashion, it's a movie of incident, and it's a movie of incident and of observation. You really do feel like you are peering in on people that are real. But the brilliant thing about 1970s movies, you feel like you are dropped in to the lives of these very, very strange yet oddly likable characters, and the screen kind of melts away, and it is quite magical. This is what Hal Ashby was so good at doing. You mentioned that he came from editing, so obviously he had a very, very strong directorial focus on actors, on editing, on writing. The direction is very subdued. It is really all about how does the director create the space for the actors and for the writing. Again, this is another brilliant hallmark of 1970s movies. The directors very often got out of the way and allowed the actors to do what they were good at, which is one of the reasons why so many 1970s movies like this stand up. I think it's brilliant. What do you think of it?
I agree with you. I also think it's brilliant. I think there are... So the thing I was coming up to, like, what I was going to bring to the episode was the idea of this could never have been made any other time period, and you literally already hit on it.
Well, there we go. So we can move on from that, can't we?
Yeah,
no. You keep going.
But the truth of the matter is that these are two very well realized characters, and you see them throughout the course of the film begin to sort of understand each other and understand how they can help the other. And it's sort of seeing the notion of death as, you know, the fact that we look at this self-immolation, this throat slitting, these hangings, that they're Harold's kind of protests, whereas Maude has actually looked at death in the face with the she's got a tattoo of from a concentration camp on her arm,
and she's about to confront it for the last time because she's old. She knows that it is really coming for her in a way that it's not necessarily coming for Harold. Yeah,
exactly. And so he sort of plays at death, whereas she's actually faced it head on, and he kind of wallows in morbidity, whereas she is a lot more untamed about the whole thing. Like you mentioned, she's very happy to carjack, but she sees the world as a place where she can try and experience everything. And, you know, the romantic side of it, you know, I could probably do without that. I would get it a lot more from, or I'd get it just as much from them being friends as I would from the fact that they end up being lovers. But at the same time, you go, hey, fine, let's roll with it.
The film is fairly discreet about that. I mean, I think actually in the later stages, I think the movie actually wants you to actively question: do they sleep with each other or not? Because I think it does play a certain scene quite ambiguously. I think which adds more residual texture to the film. Don't you think it makes it more enigmatic in a way?
Yes. Yeah, I think you're right. It could and probably nowadays would have gone a lot further. But again, it goes back to the central question of, would it have been made at any other time? And the answer, I think, is unequivocally no. It's very, like you said, of its time period, of that early 70s vein. You mentioned Bud Cort. He had a small role in MASH, and the fingerprints of director Robert Altman are kind of on this as well, in so much as the way in which people talk to each other and the way that the direction, like you said, Hal Ashby kind of gets out of the way, and Robert Altman's camera kind of does that. You know, you're watching a Robert Altman film just because it's the way people are overlapping and the types of the film, but it's very much in that new Hollywood vein that this is coming from as well.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I was going to say, we ought to contextualize this, because this movie came in what I would describe as probably the most exciting period in Hollywood history. I know some people would contest that, but I would say this kind of mid to late 60s through to the early to mid 70s was a period where all rules were basically broken in Hollywood filmmakers. And this film, Harold and Maude, came out right in the midst of all that. You think of the movies that we had, like The Graduate, Easy Rider, The Godfather, 5 Easy Pieces, which I know we've done on this podcast before. This is a really exciting time. Yeah, MASH, yeah. You think of the amount of extraordinary directors that this period yielded, and directors that were basically entrusted with character. I'm not saying that all of the films worked, but they were very radical in terms of dealing with the youth movement and in terms of addressing youthful impulse. So in this case, you've got Harold, who's a very, very singular youthful character, but you think of also something like Easy Rider, which was very, very eye-opening for its time and still is now in terms of dealing with youthful recklessness and drug taking and daredevil behavior. And I suppose in Harold and Maude, I mean, the idea of putting an elderly figure like Ruth Gordon in this kind of role, it's still kind of it's still kind of really enlivening and really funny. It's like, it's not, you get used to seeing elderly figures in quite stodgy, prim roles in which it's not about the physicality. This is very much about the physicality. This is very much about the fact that she is mischievous and she hijacks the stump of an entire tree and puts it in the back of the truck, and then they get pulled over by the policeman, played by Tom Skerritt, incidentally. And then she then engages in a kind of game of cat and mouse with the cop, played by Tom Skerritt, who keeps trying to catch up with them, and it's quite, I don't. They would only have treated a senior citizen like that at this period in time.
Yes.
I think at the period where rules were being broken in storytelling. I think.
Yeah, I mean, and as far as the role is concerned, when you look at Ruth Gordon's performance, she's brilliant, and it's not the sort of role that you were getting that often. That she would have been a comic side character in somebody else's story, but
she would have been like a
joint
punchline.
lead.
But she's not a punchline in this. She's a living, breathing character, isn't she? Yeah,
exactly. And talking of the time that it came out, it's very sort of anti-establishment in the way that you've got the bourgeois that Harold's mother puts him through. Like, they've got this ridiculous capitalist bourgeois meal that he's seeing it as a massive social inconvenience. You've got Harold's uncle being the ridiculous general who wants Harold to serve in Vietnam.
Yeah, of course, because all that was bubbling away underneath. This would have been the height of Vietnam, so a lot of these movies were a reaction to that. The disillusionment that engendered. Yeah,
exactly.
But I mean, the whole scene, the scenes with the mother and Vivian Pickles is brilliant. I mean, the fact they live in this ridiculous Baroque mansion, and he is so bored and so indifferent to it that he has to stage fake suicides within the grounds. There's the brilliant bit when his mother keeps trying to set him up on dates, and then he actually, that you mentioned earlier, like, there is the staged self-immolation outside, and then the person with whom his mother is setting him up on the date is absolutely horrified by it, and then he just comes walking back inside as if nothing's happened, and it's just it's all this, clearly this union isn't going to work, is it?
I think on the first viewing, that was the moment I got the register. That was the moment I went, okay, right, with this.
That's the kind of film it is. Yeah.
I want to talk, and it's normally you that wants to talk about the soundtracks to things.
Yeah.
But I really love the music of Cat Stevens.
You've done a more. You've kind of jumped into that vehicle and you've kind of driven off with it. That's fine. That's okay. That's okay.
I have, and I will.
Yeah.
Again, contextualizing it, you look at what Simon and Garfunkel did with The Graduate, what Jimi Hendrix did with Easy Rider, Cat Stevens doing things like Don't Be Shy and what?
Well, I was going to say, I mean, Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid, which was scored by Bob Dylan, which was around this period as well. Very, very, very radical and very influential as well. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, and then when you look at the songs that Cat Stevens, Yusuf Islam, did for Harold and Maude, you've got things like Don't Be Shy. You've got If You Want to Sing Out, Sing Out, and you've got things like Tea for the Tillerman, which probably now for people of our age most famous for being the end theme of Extras.
Oh damn it, I was going to ask you about that. I was going to do like a Dennis Hopper like pop quiz hot shot from Speed, but you got there first. Okay, fine, never mind. So yeah,
I mean, it's ingrained, right?
It is. That's probably the first time I heard it, actually, when it was used in the end credits for Extras. I wasn't familiar with it before that.
Well, my parents listened to Cat Stevens, so I knew a lot of the songs, but the way that they act is almost like a Greek chorus. They don't sit in the background. They are active parts of the film, and they're kind of like the bridges between certain scenes. And that's very keeping of this time. It's almost exactly what Simon and Garfunkel did in The Graduate as well. And I've got such a love and such a fondness for this type of folky music, or folk influenced music, we should say. That I love hearing the songs in this film, and I also now can't separate the songs from the film.
It's almost like you said, like there's so many films of this period. It's almost a hop, skip, and a jump away from being like a pop musical, isn't it? You think The Graduate was probably only a hop, skip, and a jump away from that as well. But the fact that the pop soundtracks he uses needle drops, it's like non-diegetic needle drops, and the needle drops are so well judged. They're so well judged, the tone of what we're watching, and they augment our emotional understanding. They give more emotional understanding to what we're watching, and they're not arbitrary, which I think is a problem that a lot of modern day films run into. It's like, right, we need a famous artist tied to the movie just to sell the movie even more. It's like, that's not really what the good music is about. It needs to go beyond that.
Wait, you mean you might need Taylor Swift to get involved in Toy Story 5?
Actually, that wasn't the one I was going to have a pop at. Actually, I was going to have a go at I don't know, like some of the idiotic DC movies, like Suicide Squad and the rubbish that Zack Snyder puts out. It's like we just get a pop track and just put it in there just for the sake of it, and they clearly don't know what they're doing. So yeah,
or to preempt the upcoming movie of Lars and the Real Girl. It's kind of something that Supergirl does at a certain point. There is a cover of a very famous song that is a bit misused for my money. Yeah,
to distract away from the fact there is bugger all going on elsewhere. But that's clearly not the case here, because Cat Stevens is used brilliantly in this.
That's the thing. When it's done well, and I think specifically when the songs are so woven into the fabric of what you're watching that it actually elevates both forms. It elevates the songs and the films. When it's done badly, I think that's why we can point to so many different examples of it being done badly, because it does kind of stick in the craw. But when you get good examples of great, not only just great needle drops, but great songs by artists specifically for those films, then they become impossible to separate.
Well, I think we probably ought to conclude this movie by let's conclude the storylines. So spoiler,
that's a thing.
That's a thing. I know
you said there wasn't a story.
I've kind of broken my own rules there, haven't I? I mean, Perish thought actually a lot of modern day movies don't know how to conclude their stories either, but let's prove them wrong by actually concluding this story. So it concludes with Maude dying, and prior to her dying, they have a dance. Harold and Maude have a dance, and then she tells him that she couldn't imagine a lovelier farewell
on her birthday.
Yeah. And she's taking an overdose of sleeping pills, and on the way to the hospital she passes away. And it's one of those classic fake out endings, because you do think that Harold has actually gone through with a genuine suicide out of grief and out of trauma at the end, but it reveals no, he hasn't. Actually, he's driven the car off the edge of the cliff, but he's actually chosen to embrace life rather than making a joke about death, which is what he's done all the way through the movie. So there is that journey to self-growth, which is brought across in a way that, again, being a 70s movie, it's not didactic. It's not done with a big dump of exposition. It's done through visual language and through performance, which is the way these things ought to be communicated. Show, don't tell. That's a phrase, obviously, we bring up a lot on this podcast.
Yes, indeed.
It's a very powerful ending. It's brilliant, I think.
Agree. Like the final twist showing how he's managed to sort of successfully integrate grief into his emotional spectrum. When you see him standing there and the hearse has been destroyed, like that's his old identity, right? That's the morbid one, but he keeps the banjo.
Yeah, so which she taught him how to play. Yeah, she taught him that. Yeah.
So he's actively thrown away old Harold and kept Maude with him. Which, like you say, the fact that it's all done in a show not tell way is it's a beautiful ending. It is genuinely, we talk about being there as one of the other Hal Ashby films. that's another ending that just really sticks with you. And I think
yeah,
Ashby directed films really he knows how to end a movie.
Yeah, with Peter Sellers walking across the ponds at the end of it.
Yes.
It's really attention grabbing, isn't it? And it's kind of like, what does that mean? I think the ending in this movie is more discernible. I think Harold and Maude is less
Yes.
allegorical.
Yes.
It's more discernible by design.
Yes, I agree. I agree. But the fact that he's, like you said, he's choosing life. He's choosing to grow and use the experience that Maude has helped him with. But it wasn't an initial success. It sort of, we talked a lot about the New Hollywood movement, right? And this is almost exactly in a microcosm how the New Hollywood movement went, in so much as it bombed when it first came out in 1971, and it did so badly in certain theaters that it was pulled after just like 2 weeks. But then later on in 1972, a few months later, college students and counterculture youth had found it and fell in love with the Cat Stevens soundtrack, and they began returning to see it. And a single theatre called the Westgate Theatre in South Minneapolis decided to book the movie for 115 consecutive weeks. So that is 2.5 years. And it the fact that you've got this idea of it's not found its audience, it's completely gone, and it's out of popular consciousness, to then stay somewhere for 2.5 years, breaking the record that The Sound of Music once had. It's like I say, it feels like very in keeping with the New Hollywood rediscovery, and the fact that we now look back at that period of time as having so many great movies that, but initially at the time were sort of like, oh yeah, okay, fine. You kind of gloss over the fact that you've got great movie after great movie after great movie.
Yeah, and some of those weren't appreciated in their time, and yet ironically this movie was appreciated more in the next decade, when Hollywood arguably had got more commercialized and more studio driven, as opposed to it being appreciated in the 70s when it was made, when films were more auteur directorial driven, because as we know, it's often said that Michael Cimino and Heaven's Gate killed the auteurist vision for films in 1979, 1980. I mean, opinions do vary on that. I think it's generally held that that's when the studios started to grab more real estate and started to assert their authority again, which is a real shame. So thank goodness Harold and Maude came along when it did, along with other films of its ilk. Exactly. The fact the soundtrack has been reissued 4 times, so 1972, 2007, 2021 and 2022. There have been several stage and musical adaptations of it, which is not a movie I would ever be expected to be adapted into that context, but I suppose it is a chamber piece, because it's really only about 2 characters, so I suppose it's relatively straightforward to translate on stage, right? So,
and also like we said, it's almost a musical as it is. And when you look at the track listing, some of Cat Stevens' greatest songs were written for the film, even though they didn't necessarily appear in the film. On the initial soundtrack from 1972, you had "Morning Is Broken," which is a Christian hymn, granted, but he had a great hit with that. "Wild World," "Trouble," "Father and Son," which is a beautiful, beautiful song.
That was in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, actually. I remember that being a really affecting choice for Guardians 2, actually. One of the better Marvel needle drops, I think that was. Yeah.
Yeah, James Gunn knew how to do it when he was with Marvel, at least.
Yeah, was that past tense there? Knew how to do it?
Well, I mean, he's the producer of Supergirl, so...
Yeah, so he knew how to do it then. So, yeah, it is very much a past tense thing. Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I think the music being such, you say it's a 2-hander, but it's a 3-hander. The music is a character, and it adds so much to the film as a whole. And I think for all of it, it's very easy for us to make this film sound quite off-putting and quite dour, but it isn't. It's very funny. It's very dark in its comedy at points, but it is. I enjoy watching this film. It's not a hard-going film to get through.
I think actually what you've said there brilliantly preempts what we're going to say about the next one, in as much as when you describe it, you think, what on earth are you describing there? And then it turns out to be so much more pure than any kind of glib description would indicate. I think that leads really well onto the next film, actually.
Well, that kind of gives us the perfect segue. But we are going to take a short break, and when we return, we will be discussing Lars and the Real Girl. And we're back. So, seeing as you did the plot synopsis for Harold and Maude, Sean, that falls to me to do Lars and the Real Girl. He says, as if he hadn't already asked to do it.
It's an autocracy, not a democracy. We often say here. So yeah. That's the noise. That's the noise that dictators make. When people disagree.
I'd prefer it if you just called me a dick, to be honest. But...
What, putting the dick in dictator?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's like you said, it's a very difficult film to try and describe a plot for.
You regret giving me Harold and Maude now, don't you?
Yeah, I'm just going to dive straight in. That you've got a pathologically shy man called Lars, played by Ryan Gosling. He is living in the back garden, I guess, the garage, the
family plot,
garage.
family estate.
Sure,
yeah.
With his older brother Gus, played by Paul Schneider, and his wife, played by Emily Mortimer, called Karen. And he's isolated. He's probably lonely. He's definitely shy, and he orders a lifelike, anatomically correct adult doll from the internet. But instead of the cheap joke, instead of the easy joke, what we get is a great, wonderful masterclass in collective empathy. So what we have here is look at a man using a plastic companion as his way of reaching out to the world and to try and process his grief and process his intimacy. And you've got Gosling as the really openly vulnerable and outwardly sweet Lars, who's so sort of emotionally fragile that this delusion could have shattered everything that his anatomically correct doll, who is, by the way, credited in the film as Bianca. And the idea that he needs this companion, and he goes out into the world and he pushes her around in a wheelchair, but instead of mocking him or looking away, the entire town makes the choice to buy into the bit. You know, our good friend Bo Nicholson.
Suck it, Bo.
He always says commit to the bit, right? And the town commits to the bit. They give the fact that, like, they give her a social life, they give her a job, they get her away from
church.
Lars.
Yeah, they accept her in the church. Yeah.
But they do it in a way that goes along with the facade for Lars's benefit, but also empowers him. The fact that they are all sort of buying into it, and they're taking her away from him in a way that is believable to Lars, in a way that isn't going to destroy his faith and mentality to the world. And he goes with that, and he kind of understands that. And the ultimate ending, it very similar to Harold and Maude, but ultimately it's all in what Lars is doing. It's all in Lars's mind, and the fact that he learns through this coping mechanism that's provided him by the community. Like they protect him and they give him judgment-free neighborhoods, and he learns then how to heal himself and how to eventually begin his life proper, as it were. I've really tried to do this film for almost the entire time we've been doing this podcast. I've definitely mentioned it on a number of occasions. I love this movie. Sean, what do you think?
Yeah, I really, really like it as well. I think it's really tender and really emotive and really sincere. This is actually the first time I've watched this since it was out in the cinema way back in 2007. I'd actually forgotten a lot of it, apart from the fact that Ryan Gosling was in it. And, it's interesting because it's Ryan Gosling is now one of the biggest superstars on the planet, right? And when this film came out, he'd done The Notebook and he'd done Half Nelson and a couple of other things. Obviously, he'd come off the Disney Channel as a kid, but people primarily in this country, at least, knew him for the few films that he'd made. And it is actually interesting.
Yes.
He's had an interesting career trajectory, in as much as this is kind of like an outlier comedy movie, and then he kind of went into the serious brooding drive mode, and then he's kind of come back out of that action mode back into the kind of comedy this movie demonstrates. And then since then he's kind of balanced action and comedy. So Ryan Gosling is a very, very interesting actor. He has all these contradictory facets as a screen presence, and they are very much on display in this movie. He can be very, very funny, but he can also be heartbreakingly introverted and fragile at the same time. Again, these are characteristics that we've seen across many, many different Ryan Gosling performances in the years since Lars and the Real Girl. It's the classic thing, there's a line of thought which basically says that Jaws isn't a film about the shark, it's about the people. Well, this isn't a film about a sex doll. This is a film about the guy who owns the sex doll and basically how he's learning to heal. It's basically about, you could almost like blank the doll, really, and it's about his journey to self-growth. Again, you mentioned that it is like Harold and Maude, and in Harold and Maude we see Harold growing as a person for the better, and in this film we basically see a community very gently trying to coax somebody out of their shell back to some kind of redemptive healing, and it's not easy. It's very difficult because Lars harbors real trauma with his brother, and the community has got to be mindful of that. But I think it's very, very admirable in the film that it isn't played as a joke. I mean, this would have been an appalling movie if they'd done that, but a far weaker script and a far weaker director, other than Craig Gillespie, would have played this as a joke. It would have been like a fairly smutty, guy buys a sex doll farce. And I think it's a credit to the filmmakers that it isn't that. The doll is the catalyst for what happens, basically.
Exactly. I completely agree. Do you remember way, way, way back in history, in 2021, we discussed a movie called Harvey with
James
a
Stewart?
certain
Harvey.
Jimmy Stewart, yeah. Again, that movie is called Harvey, but it's not about Harvey. It's about Elwood.
About Dowd.
It's about-
Elwood Pete. Let me give you my card here. Elwood Dowd. Yeah.
And there's a lot of Harvey in Lars and the Real Girl. There's a lot of James Stewart in Gosling's performance, and I think that Ryan Gosling is the actor that Ryan Reynolds wishes he was. It's
interesting. Yeah.
Well, when you talk through the career trajectory, he was romantic lead, he was indie darling, he was Oscar nominated, and then went into the actiony thing with your Blade Runners and whatnot, and then moving back into comedy with Barbie again. I think he's far more versatile than the other Ryan. We're not going to talk about The Lovely Bones because, frankly, no one should talk about The Lovely Bones. But
what are you talking about? The fact that Ryan
infamously he wasn't in.
Yeah, Ryan Gosling went up for that, and I think the rumor is that he put on weight for the role, and they didn't want it, and then they rejected him from it. So then they got Mark Wahlberg in to play the character, which was really convincing.
So he was actually cast.
I thought, as far as I'm aware, he was, or he might have. Ryan Gosling might have auditioned for it, but
Gosling was cast.
Yeah,
he came out relatively recently, but yes, I think that there's a lot of films that there's a lot of influences that go into Lars and the Real Girl, and I think absolutely Harvey is one of them. For
I'd never thought of that before. That's a good comparison. That I agree. Yeah, I never thought of that.
Well, thanks.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that I would have picked the director of that classic 2007 Sean William Scott Billy Bob Thornton comedy, Mr. Woodcock, as the director.
You're the only one who remembers that, I think. Also, the director of this year's Supergirl. Oh dear.
Yeah.
How the mighty have fallen, right?
But then you sprinkle in I, Tonya.
Yes.
Cruella was. I really enjoyed Cruella as well.
Cruella was fine. Yeah.
That was a great performance by Emma Stone.
Yeah, well, it was. Yeah, I mean, we didn't need the film, but she was very, very good in it. I mean, Craig Gillespie is capable of doing very, very good character studies, which is kind of weird how he's founded with Supergirl. Like, why he ever got involved in that, I don't know. But this is clearly his métier. This is the stuff that Craig Gillespie is good at. So,
well, without reviewing Supergirl too much, the stuff with Millie Alcock, the stuff with her sort of trying to cope with her own trauma and trying to find her place in the universe, and like that is completely out of Lars and the Real Girl. That is that's the Craig Gillespie wheelhouse. Where it falls down is the plot and
the rest
action.
of it.
Yeah,
the superhero stuff.
Yeah, but there's a moment where she's so overawed and so overwhelmed with something that happens in that movie that she flies out to space and screams. Like, give me that shit. Give me that Supergirl. That is fucking great. And that is the director of Lars and the Real Girl coming out.
Yeah, because there is a bit in Lars and the Real Girl where Ryan Gosling does have the long-awaited emotional outburst. So you can see it coming, and it's kind of a cathartic outpouring of grief and and trauma, which is directly or indirectly led to him having the relationship with Bianca in the first place, which everyone else then adopts. I mean, it's very. I mean, again, I'm not the first person to say this, obviously, but it's very, very post Fargo. I mean, I did actually look up where they'd set it, and it's kind of funny looking, but it's a lot less mean spirited than Fargo. This is a much nicer film. I think it's more benevolent to its characters overall. I mean, obviously, Marge was very sympathetic in Fargo, but everybody else in Fargo was a complete idiot, isn't it? But
I was going to say, this is a village full of Marges.
Yeah, it's a good way of putting it. Yeah, exactly. You got those snowy vistas. You got the small town. You've got the accents. I mean, it's clearly very, very post Fargo. It's clearly very, very, very inflected by the Coen brothers, but I think in a much more gentle register. And I think that
it was filmed in Minnesota, wasn't it? Or was it set in Minnesota?
I thought it was set in. It feels like it's set in Minnesota. Yeah, I don't think it actually specifies where it's set, does it?
It feels Minnesota-y.
Yeah, it was set in Minnesota, and it was filmed in Toronto and Ontario. So, filmed in Canada.
I mean, that makes sense. Ryan Gosling is one of the greatest Canadian exports.
He is indeed. Yeah, it's very, very well written. I think Nancy Oliver's screenplay does a very good job of skirting the usual cliches. Like, you think, for instance, at the beginning that his brother is just going to be a bit of a cock and is going to be completely unsympathetic, but then the brother's sympathies are allowed to kind of steal up when you think, oh, okay, the brother isn't a cock, but he has a reason for being like bullish and a bit dismissive, because he has a skin in the game as far as the family trauma with Lars is concerned, obviously being his brother. You have Emily Mortimer's character, who is consistently sympathetic, who just wants Lars.
She's the bridge, right? She's the bridge to the rest of the town.
Yeah, she's the inciting character, basically. Inciting.
And, I think the narrative choice of having the town be as sympathetic as it was, like Nancy Oliver's Oscar-nominated writing, it goes almost against what you would expect small town tropes to be. You'd expect isolated small towns to be far more judgmental, as normally depicted in films or TV shows. the more isolated you are, the more sort of hick town you are, and the fact that this is the village raising the child, as it were. The fact that they normalize Bianca's presence the way that they do, it's just such a beautiful and such a wonderful script.
They normalise her presence, and they also learn, for Lars' sake, to normalise her death, because clearly, being an inanimate object, she's not really dying, but that's not the point. The point is that Lars thinks she's dying, and again, this becomes a metaphor for Lars outgrowing the relationship with the doll and actually learning to fashion a human relationship that will really properly heal him and set him on his path, and that is heartbreaking. The idea that it so firmly puts you in this character's mindset really well, I think.
Yeah, I completely agree. But we're at the risk of similar to doing what we did with Harold and Maude, I guess. It's funny.
Yeah.
Right? It's a touching movie, but it is funny. It is enjoyable. It's got all of this in there, yet it still manages to play it light. I guess it would actually be classified probably first as a comedy and then as a... Would you put it as a romance film? I hope it's not a romance film. That's something I don't need in my mind.
Well, I mean, if one is sympathetic towards Lars, then it is a romance film. Yeah,
Emotionally,
I would
hopefully,
say so.
yes. Yeah. I hope it's emotional. I hope it's not physically one. That's Ryan Gosling's a beautiful man, but even still.
Yeah. I mean, again, the film doesn't address that. The film skips around.
It'd be a worse film if it did.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And maybe the film does suggest that, it is more about an emotional connection between Lars and Bianca than it is about anything physical. I agree with you. I think that's the film's credit, to be honest.
Yes. Do you know that they had different faces for the doll? With starting with heavy makeup and moving to more natural looking, and then the finally her failing health face is slightly green. So I mean, I'm kind of imagining very Dorian Grayish notions going on with this doll, but
yeah,
that can only be the reason that Lars thinks that that's what's happening.
Yeah. Well, when you said face replacement on a doll, I automatically thought of the Charlie Kaufman thing, Anomalisa. When they had the face replacement on the stop motion dolls. But yeah, so this is a much cheerier film than Anomalisa.
It is, and it's not quite like Face Off either. It'd be very different if you put Nicolas Cage's face on Bianca.
And what if you put Bianca's face on Nicolas Cage? That'll be something.
No one would know.
Yeah, that would be it would be Cage and the real girl. That'd be a different experience. So yeah. But how good is Ryan Gosling in this? I mean, he's terrific. I mean, he's a wonderful actor anyway.
Yes.
And
he is, and he has to balance it all, right? He has to be the one that he has to be sympathetic whilst also completely and utterly believe what Lars believes. He has to believe that she is that Bianca is real, and he has the awkwardness. He has the so in the film he's really sensitive to touch, so he doesn't want to be touched. He doesn't want he keeps himself almost to himself, but he's his performance balancing all of those things whilst still remaining likable and charming. He's brilliant. He's probably my favorite working Hollywood actor.
Yeah,
in that I'll watch a movie because he's in it.
Yeah, and again, in the years since this, you look at the range that he's done. You look at things like Drive, Only God Forgives, The Nice Guys. I mean, I would say he was revelatory in The Nice Guys, but I suppose some of that goofiness does come out of films like this. I suppose the DNA of that performance was so, and that might actually be my favourite Ryan Gosling performance, actually, The Nice Guys, because he is just hysterically funny in that.
I mean, you could say he's amaze. You could say that he's very good at acting alongside non-humans and give him a right
Yes.
big thumbs down.
Yeah, there's a joke in there somewhere. I'm not sure if I got it.
Project Hail Mary.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Sorry, just the zigzag from Nice Guys to Project Hail Mary. I thought you were having a pop at some of his co-stars in other films, but no, you weren't doing
No,
that.
I would never say anything about Russell Crowe.
No, of course not. No, Project Hail Mary, brilliant. Yeah, fantastic.
No, I was
film.
like,
Yep.
you know, you've got Rocky in that film, you've got Bianca in this film. He's acting alongside nothing, and he's still brilliant at doing it.
Yeah, and in this Lars and the Real Girl, he even makes chunky sweaters sexy. So it's.
I mean, so does Chris Evans in Knives Out. So
he does actually. To be fair, yeah. Eating.
I think it's
biscotti,
just a sexy man thing. That's the.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. There's something about these very like wintry, cozy yet quirky movies featuring like hunky Hollywood A-listers wearing like chunky knitwear. There is something about that.
That sounds like a frame-to-frame theme.
Yeah,
hunky Hollywood actors in chunky knitwear.
In chunky knitwear. Yeah, let's do it. Yeah.
We'll have to wait until it cools down somewhat because
yeah.
Again, as recording, we are in the middle of a heat wave.
I'm dying as I'm recording. I don't want to think about chunky knitwear. I'm dying of heat at the moment. Yeah, which is amazing for the UK. But
yeah. I mean, we actually cancelled a recording because of how bad my sunburn was. That's true.
Yeah.
No such sunburn in Lars and the Real Girl. I think that because it treats its characters seriously, then we treat them seriously, and the whole idea that it takes a village to raise a child. Well, Lars is the child in this instance, and his mental well-being is not just his individual responsibility, but the community one. The community refuses to shame him. The community shields him and keeps him safe. The entire town attends her funeral. They're mourning the necessary death of his girlfriend / protective armor. Like, they bring him out of his shell because it's a collective effort. And I just think the film it's so wonderful. It's so heartwarming. It's so uplifting. Great movie. Really, really fun film.
Yeah, I'm really glad we did this one because, like you said, it's been a long time coming. So we should say that it was inspired by photographer Elena Dorfman's work, Still Lovers. So there is a kind of factual basis in the background of all this. But albeit probably a loose one. But yeah,
I can imagine that being a jumping off point. And the fact it's not just a one joke movie. It does have a real sensibility about it, and it does have a real caring about the entire narrative. Oscar nominated for its screenplay. It was never going to win that year. It went up against the might of Diablo Cody's Juno, which became undeniable at that point. But it was also up against things like, have you heard of that little movie Ratatouille?
Not anyone can cook, but a cook can come from anywhere.
Well, so, exactly. Yeah. And Michael Clayton was nominated, as well as The Savages, the Philip Seymour Hoffman, Laura Linney movie.
What an extraordinary period for movies that was. Like, late 2007 going into 2008, because at that period you had like No Country for Old Men, There Will Be Blood, Assassination of Jesse James, I think, was out around this point. I mean, Hollywood was going through a real purple patch at this stage.
Not just Hollywood, you had like La Vie en Rose, where you had Into the Wild, which I loved. Gone Baby Gone, like it was. Diving Bell and the Butterfly was around then as well.
That's a lovely film. Yeah, that's brilliant. Yeah.
It was. I'm reluctant to sort of call it out as a purple patch because it came right at the moment where I was falling in love with cinema. So, it's easy for me to look back at that through rose-tinted glasses and say that's the reason why it's so great. But
it was that was a good period. I mean, that was. I just started my third year of university at that point, so late 2007 going into 2008, and I remember being staggered by the amount of good films that were out in that period. And I'm like, and these were like grown up drama films. They weren't action films. Like they were like, you know,
Exactly.
about complicated human beings. Again, like the
Mm.
1970s, to bring it back to Harold and Maude, it was
Yeah.
like we had like a mini new Hollywood period for about 4 or 5 months. You know, it was fascinating, really.
Pre-Avengers taking over.
Yeah, because Iron Man was what, May 2008, and then that sent everything
and
in
Avengers
a new direction.
was 2012.
Yeah, don't get me
although
wrong,
that
I love
was-
the first Iron Man.
that-
I love Iron
exactly.
Man, so,
and also I love Avengers, and I love the early state that the early phases of Marvel were genuinely exciting to be there. But now we're where we are.
We've gone from being Harold to being Maude. The course of this podcast.
Yeah. So budgeted at just $12.5 million. It took just 11.3 at the box office. It was the indie darling. It was one of the sort of film festival-y escapees that managed to gain enough traction to get Oscar nominated. It was one of the National Board of Review's top 10 films of that year, which, as we've mentioned, was a big deal for that year. It was a hell of a year. And yeah, I wouldn't say it launched the career of Ryan Gosling, because not enough people saw it for that to happen, but it certainly helped him along this fascinating, wonderfully unique path that he has as an actor. And I think this is one of the sort of little seen movies in his filmography, and I'd quite like that to change.
Yeah, here, agree.
That will just about wrap us up for this week's episode. Next week, we're going to be looking at films inspired by the Odyssey. So we will be embracing our Christopher Nolan. By the time we record the episode, I will definitely have not seen the Odyssey. Sean may have seen the Odyssey.
I may have seen it. I mean, it depends if they're classing me as an influencer and blocking me out of the screening. So, yeah.
Well, I mean, maybe you need to pull a few more duck faces on Instagram, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, this is true. Maybe I'll do them in horizontal as well.
Isn't it?
I'll film them horizontally as well, because I know you like that. So yeah.
So we will be discussing two films that adapt the Odyssey. You'll be able to find out what those are, because the Odyssey is one of those sort of ancient texts that it's very easy to say it's adapted from, but I think we've chosen well.
Yeah, the Odyssey is the basis of everything in Western literature. Effectively, it is Christopher Nolan uses this word, foundational. Everything came off this. So the fact that Nolan is doing it is exciting. The fact that we're talking about it, I think, is a good choice, if I don't say so myself. So,
well, I'm glad that you're on board with it. And like I said, there's one in particular that I'm really on board with. You'll be able to find out what those films are next week on the podcast. You can find us at various different places. We're all across social media as at Frame to Frame Pod. You can hop on to the Punch and Pie Discord, where you can have a chat with us. I say us, I mean me. Sean never checks Discord, and engage with us over there as well. But until next week, where we're talking about adaptations of The Odyssey, I'm Andy Williams.
And I'm Sean Wilson.
Thank you very much for listening. We'll speak to you again. Bye-bye.